Support for this podcast comes from the patrons at patreon.com/FMLFPL. Okay, welcome to another FMLFPL Fireside Chat. This is Alon. I'm joined by the legendary FPL manager, late riser. How are you doing, LR?
I am doing good. This is a little bit of a fan moment for me as well, because FML is actually the first podcast, not even the first FPL podcast that I've gotten hooked to. So you guys really got me into the culture, and FPL doesn't really begin for me until I'm listening to your preseason chat. So yeah, very, very excited to be here.
Means a lot, dude. I appreciate it. And it's been a while. Like you said, I mean, you were on, I looked it up. You were on with Walsh over 2 years ago, over 100 episodes ago. And you guys were looking at the last 9 game weeks of the lockdown season. Like, that's how long ago it was. Like, no fans in the stands, just nightmare, pandemic, whatever. So where are you at sort of this season so far? Like, what percent stuck in are you right now with your preseason and tinkering and planning and just FPL everything?
Before Sunday, I wasn't really stuck into things. But, I spoke to Baker on Monday, had a promoted teams pod yesterday. I heard your pod, the premium one, this morning as well. So slowly getting into the group, but I feel like there are so many unknowns at the moment in terms of what City are going to look like, what Liverpool are going to look like. And we're talking about the best teams in the country at the moment, Like you at the moment, you can't point out and say who's going to be playing on the left and who's going to be playing on the right in that City team. And those are really good FPL options, right? So we need a lot more information before any sort of serious tinker is out there.
Yeah. And I remember back then you weren't a big tinkerer, but also I assume a lot has changed now. I feel like back then, at least from my perspective, you were sort of this like mythical creature who somehow finishes top 1,000 every year. And I'm like, who the hell is this guy? What the hell is happening right now? I didn't even know that was possible. And now, I feel like most people who play FPL or listen to FPL pods or on FPL Twitter generally know who you are. And of course, you have your own pod, the FPL Wire, which just keeps growing and growing every season. How has that changed your relationship to FPL and how you play FPL? Has it at all changed?
It's changed not because of me doing content per se or absorbing content. I used to be as obsessed. I used to spend the same number of hours, if you ask me. Maybe earlier it was reading articles on FFS or reading articles on BBC because that's the information we had back then. And now it's just a lot more filtered in terms of you're getting a lot more value for every hour that you're spending researching FPL, because a lot of people are doing good research and it's available to you, including you guys, on the platter to make sense of. So in terms of how obsessed I am with the game, I think not much has changed. In terms of how my playstyle has changed, I think that the biggest factor in slightly changing my playstyle has been the year before last. I had a 700k season. And before that, things were going all right. It was pretty much under 10K every season. So, it was my first season in a long time. So that's when you just look back and figure, what the fuck happened. Yeah. And it's exactly what you pointed out in your postmortem pod. Because what I realized is I looked at my best 3 or 4 seasons back then, and what I noticed was so for people that don't know, I do like to bet against the chalk once in a while and try to spike those hauls, etc. as well. Most of those spikes came through post game week 15, and what happened in the 600k season is I talked myself into starting without Mo Salah game week 1. And the season before that, I had a really, really good season. And you start to believe everything that's going on in your head, right?
Yeah. Got a little inflated, yeah.
So it was difficult to recover from that. And I'm like, because tilt is a weird thing, when you're sitting at 2 million, 3 million, you're trying to sort of compromise and shortcut your way. And make your way up the ranks. So I feel like I'm all right, not backing what I see or backing the instinct at the start of the season, because it's essentially still just a roll of the dice.
Yeah.
I think nobody really knows much early season.
Yeah, and I remember when we did that post-mortem where I sort of came to the same conclusion on my own play style, my own teams. You immediately sent me your Twitter thread that was like, dude, I already figured this out. Look at all the data.
Yeah.
And I'm like, fuck, I should have read that beforehand. But yeah, I mean, it's worth reminding that even though it feels like we know everything, right? Like if some stranger on the street asked me 5 questions right now, I wouldn't even hesitate. I'd answer all 5. I'd be like, yeah, this is going to happen. This is going to happen. They're going to win the league. They're going to finish fourth, whatever. But we actually don't know anything. And I remember this. I'm not like a huge math guy. I'm not that good at it and whatnot. But there's a double pivot episode where they said roughly after 10 matches, then we're at about 50% of the, or 50% likely that the data is like good or something like that. And so 50%, like we're still talking about a flip of a coin. You know, it still might be 50% wrong, but even and that's over 10 game weeks. So who the hell am I to be like, I know what's going on in game week 1. I'm going against it, you know? So that was obviously a big theme in the premium episode with the ownership. And I definitely wanted to talk about that with you because you're so much better at the game than Walsh and I. But, you know, right now, I don't know if you've been tinkering, but the ownership is like so high on like 9 or 10 players. Like there's a very strong established template. It's very affordable. It's very, I think, objectively good. I think only maybe like Neto is the only pick where I'm like, I don't know about Neto, but every other pick, I'm like, yeah, he's just a good pick. How do you where do you begin with making your own team? Like, do you look at that? Do you like look at ownership and are like, I should get all these guys, or do you start with the premiums, or how do you do this?
It starts with the fixtures always.
Oh,
Like
interesting.
just always starts with the fixtures. Have a look at what the teams are looking like, etc., etc. as well. Because my assumption is that most of my assumptions early season might be wrong. So
Right.
why not just look at the fixtures and try spacking a few halls there, and obviously try getting, as especially this season because of the way they've priced the game, it's possible to get 9 or 10 players from the good teams if you go big at the back. So that's essentially how I sort of build the team in my head, where okay, I know I want to have, and this season it becomes a lot simpler because the best 2 teams in the country have really, really good fixtures to start the season. And that's sort of where I build my team. But there's always the inkling to do the thing, like you guys said, right? You want to do a little bit of the thing,
I know,
right? And
it's like the special sauce.
yeah. So maybe do like 10-20% of the thing, because the motive of the game is to still have fun, right? Like you want to have, and I know you spoke about, you know, putting it on your forehead in terms of points are fun, getting points are fun, but you want to play this game differently, and so do I.
Yes,
like you
absolutely.
don't want to do it the way it's supposed to be done. You want to do a little bit, because what's the point of watching so much football then? Is what I ask myself. So I give myself a little bit of that space. But lesson learned in that 600k season, you know, earlier I used to think about FPL being the game in which you have to put yourself in the position to get lucky. Now there's a small addition to that definition now, provided you put yourself in the position to not get fucked. Like
yes, that's good.
Like,
that's really good. Yeah.
Like that's insurance, right? Like you need to do that. Like the bet for is probably as important as the bet against.
Right.
Like you need to look at both the things in my head. And so, you know, if I'm not going to be stupid and bet against Mo Salah early season, I'm not going to be thinking about betting against Erling Haaland early season. And it's fun also, like owning this new guy who's come to the Premiership, very, very highly rated, plays for the best team in the country. But then I'll give you an example of what's happening with my brain this season. And I'm like, there are 2 things that have changed in the meta per se this season. One of them is that we have a clean slate game week 16.
Yep.
Like that's
huge.
Never happened before. And I'm almost sure that I'm very comfortable wildcarding game week 2, 3, 4, or 5 if I have to. Because what's happening is when you're in previous seasons, let's say if you're hitting the wildcard button around game week 2, 3, or 4, you're thinking you're skeptical of pushing the button because you're not sure of the information that you have and the assumptions that you made, because you're building your team for 20 plus game weeks. Essentially, you're probably
Right.
going to use your wildcard around game week 25, 30 is what the
Yeah.
assumption you make in your head. This time, even if you wildcard game week 5, it's just for 10 weeks.
Right. That's pretty
Like
crazy to think about. Yeah.
Like, you're not taking forward, except for team value, you're not really taking anything else forward further into the season. So I'm looking at that. I'm looking at the fact that Conte has a full preseason and Spurs were absolutely nuts in the second part of last season. And I'm like, there's an opportunity, especially when you see Southampton at home and Wolves at home in the first 3 game weeks.
And like, Forest in game week 4.
And Forest in game week 4. And I'm like, that's the opportunity. And so, in my head, I'm not even tinkering right now because I know that I'll need to find a few sacrifices, because the bet against is important, right? We're trying to play the game as well, like you and Walsh mentioned, that we're playing against 10 million other people, and Haaland can easily spike a hat trick game week 2, and you're 40 points behind 6 million people in the game already, and that's not a good position to be in. That's not fun. That's not fun, and I don't know how possible it is to get a balanced premium draft, because I want Son or Kane, because I see hauls in those games. And that's where I'm at the moment, where if there are a few enablers or people that emerge that are providing amazing value, then I incline to go that way. But you need to not let be a thing that you're obsessed with. Like, all right, if Son plus player B doesn't make more sense than Diaz plus
Vardy and 6 million, whatever.
Then you don't go there. Just but that's the opportunity. That's what I want to try doing.
It's like,
and that's
where you start, and then when you're actually playing around, you see if it's actually viable or not. That's basically what you're saying. Yeah, I mean, I think that's the struggle that Walsh and I have had. That we were I felt like I was going through like a meltdown on the premium pod, because it was just. The feeling that I had was constantly like, okay, so I'm tabling the fact that I need Haaland and I need Mo. And I'm not even going to argue with that. I do accept that as like, that's fine. I understand and accept that. But then there's that other side like you're talking about, where I'm like, okay, but I want a Spurs player. I want Vardy. I want Kev. And that's where it starts to become so frustrating, because it's so difficult. It's almost unreachable. And the flip side of that is also, if you do go for something like that, like let's just say you found a draft you like that had Mo, Haaland, Son, just in an imaginary world, that still means you're probably betting against at least one of Trent Cancelo, who are both 50+% owned, right? That means you're betting against Reece, who's 40-something% owned. That means you're betting against Diaz, who's 30% owned. Like, that means you're betting against Jesus, who's 55% owned. Like, why is it okay to bet against 56% Jesus and not okay to bet against 64% Haaland?
Because the maximum Jesus is going to cost you is 54%. Haaland could cost you 110%.
True.
Because people are going to captain. That. So the weight of the bet just becomes a lot bigger. So that's essentially it.
Yeah.
If you want to bet against Jesus, if you want to bet against Reece James, I'm still all right to do it, because are there opportunities in terms of fixtures? Are they clean sheet fixtures? I try to look at that. The opposition that Jesus is playing, I think he's got Palace and Leicester early on. Am I thinking he's going to go crazy and get 3 goals against 2 decent teams? Like, that's the sort of weightage that you build in your head when you're betting that.
Yeah.
And I want to bring this right into the picture, because like the kind of things you guys have spoken about in terms of big picture value picks throughout the season, it just isn't fully in concurrent with the meta. And the biggest meta is that you're getting a clean slate game week 16. Like, you can afford to go haul chasing here, looking at a 5-week slate or a 6-week slate, and then later a 9-week slate. Like, that's the thing you need to sort of balance.
So you basically think you'll probably be more aggressive than you have been in the past early season, where you said that you're, famously a late riser, second half of the season guy. And then Are you scared of that at all? Because of the thing we just talked about before, where like we don't know shit early season. Like, so is taking risks early even good, despite a second wild card?
But the risk is weighted, right? It's insured. I'm starting with Salah and Haaland.
Yeah.
So like for things to go bad, they really need to go bad because I'm ensuring the heavy bets against.
Yeah.
I'm not really going batshit crazy. There's a little bit of a balance that I'm finding in terms of how crazy I'm allowing myself to go early season. And in my head, is it even a far shot where you're expecting Son or Kane to spike 3 or 4 returns in those early 4-5 games? It's a fairly safe bet if you really think about it.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think they're the third best team in the league, and I look at those fixtures and I'm like, yeah, they're gonna destroy. In 2 out of those 4 games, they'll probably score 3+ at least, right?
Yeah.
I feel like that's safe. At Chelsea, okay, maybe not. And maybe one of the other games they have like a tough 1-0 or something. The ball's just not going in the net. But yeah, the other games, yeah, probably 3+.
And the right balance, I reckon, is you have these 9.5, 10 million premiums that you guys have spoken about, the Brunos, the Sterlings. I think
Vardy. I love Vardy.
Great. I'm with you on that. Yeah. Like if instead of going Son and Kane, I was going Vardy or Bruno, or it'd be fairly easy to make a decently balanced team if you're spending 9.5, 10 million on that third spot, in my opinion. I think 12 million is the real challenge, or 11.5 million is the real challenge when you're trying to build that team. But then I wouldn't be looking at it if I didn't see opportunity in Southampton at home and Wolves at home. Like, there's an opportunity there.
Right. Yeah. No, I hear you, man. It's. I feel like, I don't know, maybe it's because we had a month off. I mean, I really do feel like that as a factor for Walsh and I, because usually we're just like on the grind, never stopping. But a month off to sort of reflect, but to also reinvigorate like the juices of like, okay, I want to actually do well. Like, it's not fun anymore not doing well, you know what I mean? And so actually like thinking and analyzing this stuff that we have tended to probably avoid talking about. We just talk about who we hate and who we love or whatever. It's interesting, but it's a little scary and overwhelming at the same time.
But I feel like to find yourself as an FPL player, I think you maybe need to go through that meltdown to eventually get there and talk about FPL more from a strategic point of view. Because there's no doubt in my head. I was telling you before I came on, I've heard 95% of your pods in the last 2.5, 3 seasons. So I know how you guys think. And in my head, there is no doubt that you guys are the best readers in the game in terms of what's happening on the field. Like, you guys are 2 to 3, 4 weeks ahead of most people before people realize that, okay, this thing is actually happening on the pitch. And from a very selfish point of view, that's why I listen to you. Like, and apart from it being a lot of fun, the fact that your reads are amazing is why I listen to you. And that's why the suggestion that I made, in questions for the pod is I feel like you guys need to do like one pod a month, which is just sitting back and saying, right, these are the things that we're seeing.
Yeah.
But like, out of the things to see, what can we use to translate into getting or gaining rank in FPL?
Right.
Like that's about it. That you just need to have that extra one question. Like, okay, we know this now. How do we use this to gain rank?
Yeah, I mean, I fucking love that idea. I think Walsh would be into that too. We do 2 pods a week minimum anyway, as is. Like, what's one more reflective pod? It's nothing, but
it can even be the last 10 minutes of any pod.
Right. Yeah, it doesn't even have to be its own episode. Totally.
Just that.
I just need you on once a month to remind me to stop doing stuff. But we DM enough that like we know each other's moves and stuff. It's no problem. But yeah, I mean, the thing that I'm not scared of, but I'm like, I'm excited about it, is that I'm ready to get grilled by you, because I know that you, and specifically you and Baker, are like, yeah, let's ask Alon about this, like this problem, that problem, this weakness, that weakness. So.
It isn't even a weakness. Like, so we were talking yesterday, and I'm like, we were like, what do you want to talk about? And I'm like, let's go off the cuff, because like we know each other and we can really talk about anything. It doesn't really matter. Yeah. And I just suggested to you that I have a unique position of having heard you guys for the most part of last 2 years, and I think it's a good opportunity to just bring that out, because so everybody who listens to you wants you to do well. Like,
I know. Well, okay, I understand what you're saying, but they also, everyone at the same time says that the best episodes are when we do really badly. Everyone loves a dark pod. You love a dark pod.
I love a dark pod, but dark pods will come twice a season, irrespective of whether you're doing well or not.
Yes, true.
Like these things happen in FPL, but I've already mentioned what the main thing is. Like, you see so many good things in terms of reading the game, and just the question is, okay, we see these 6 things this week. Now, do we need to act on these 6 things? What really happens is, out of those 6 things that you see, 3 things really, really excite you because nobody else has seen it, and it's so much fun to see this thing. But the other thing that's probably not as exciting might lead to more FPL gain.
Right. Yeah, can you give me an example? What do you mean? Like, so you're saying,
like, for example, for example, the obsession with goalkeepers.
Yeah.
Once I pick a goalkeeper, I'm not really thinking about that choice again.
Yeah.
Until my wild card.
Yeah.
Or when I don't have a position to settle in my 10 on the pitch.
Yeah.
And I will only look at it then. And it's all right if that goalkeeper's getting 20 points lesser to the field over a period of 5 weeks.
Not a big deal. Yeah.
No, because my mind is tuned in terms of how do I gain 20 points on the field in 1 week.
Right.
Like, that's how my brain is working.
Yeah,
but that's how I also play the game. And that sort of changes season to season, etc. as well. Like, so that's one thing that I want to talk about. You guys are talking about the chalk. I feel like the things that I'm going to tell you, you already know, because I think you're already going through that process. Because, like you mentioned, the break sort of reinvigorated the whole factor of, right, you really want to do well, and I think you're perfectly capable of doing well in the thing.
Thank you.
Like Walsh is so aware of the meta in terms of, if you told him make a separate team and just play chalk, because these are the things that you're supposed to do to get a top 10k finish, I guarantee you he gets top 10k finishes 6 out of 7 years, because 6 out of 7 years. Like, but it's the constraint. Like, so I mean, I don't know if this is the right example or not, because I was talking to CY, who's Baker's pod partner.
Yeah.
And we were talking about how content is blowing up and shit. And what people are really doing is 10-minute, 15-minute, 60-second content.
Yeah.
And I was like, it's so easy to talk FPL just for 10 minutes. And his reply to me was, it's so difficult to talk FPL for just 10 minutes.
Yeah, true. That's spot on.
Like, that's the constraint in terms of, I don't know if I don't think you can percentage this and gamify this, but like, just make sure you're aware of the bets against when you're making the bets against. That's really about it. And be aware of the chalk. Like, how do you get aware of the chalk? Just go to livefpl.net and they're giving you EORs for these players every week. But do that. That's really it.
Right. Yeah, I think that, one of the many ways that Walsh and I struggle would be, we don't have so-and-so and his EO is really high and he's just killing us every week. Our first reaction isn't, I'm going to go get this guy and solve the problem. I think our first reaction is, I fucking hate this guy. And I have a voodoo doll and I'm stabbing it before I go to sleep every night to hope he just gets -5 points so I can finally do well.
Yeah, I know.
Too much emotion.
I know, man. Too much. It's not too much emotion. It's good to be emotional with FPL. I just think, like, if I was to quantify this right now, we want to make bets against the chalk because that's how we're wired as FPL players.
Yep.
Now, even if you have 3 players that are different from the chalk, you have 3 into 38. Now, that's about 250 bets you're making against the chalk. And these are even smaller bets. And then there will be 6 or 7 or 10 times a season, probably better. We've already seen proof in some data that those big bets also can be made in the second half of the season.
Yeah.
So tell yourself you had 300 bets for the season in terms of going against the chalk. It's just too early to make the big bet when you start making the big bets.
Right.
That's sort of a subjective process. And I mean, Double Pivot told you that, like, because we actually start seeing data which is 50% good 10 game weeks into the season.
Right.
That's all the meta that you need to know.
Right.
That's really all that you need to know.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not a poker player, but I feel like it's sort of analogous to like you're sitting at a poker table. You're not going all in before you know you have the read of the table. Like you're not just blowing everything right away. You play the long game. You try and read the situation and then pick your spot. I feel like that's sort of how you play the game. Is like chill, a couple picks, a couple moves, thoughts, and then like I feel like you're famous for being like, okay, this is the week I'm hitting in Aguero and triple capping, or this is the week I'm bringing in Ronaldo last season, like capping against the grain, like going against Mo, whatever it is. So yeah, I mean, I think it's a great way to play the game. That's always why I use you as an example. And obviously I'm one of the reasons, besides just, we're friends and stuff, that I want you on the pod is because I feel like you're the closest in terms of style to how Walsh and I want to play the game. But you obviously are really good and do really well and consistently really high ranks versus like, I could find a lot of people who are just rogue all the time and do really terribly. And I'm like, yeah, cool. But like, it's not working. So I don't really care.
Yeah. The key is not go rogue all the time. Just allow yourself 20%. That's it, I guess.
Yeah.
And I think if you sort of added this weightage in your head, the bets you'd make me be much better than the bets I'm making. Because you guys see everything there is to see. That's really it.
Once I win, the Indian mini league, then I'll let you know. Once I'm number 1 overall in a country, then we can talk.
Yeah, we'll talk. Yeah.
So what else should we talk about? Oh, go ahead.
I'll just so I was talking to Baker and I just took down the pointers, which pretty much covers everything that we've needed to cover. But it's worth quoting him in terms of what he had to say, and he sent me this text. So I just told him, I'm going to talk to Alon tomorrow, and I told him this might be a good angle because we're listeners. And so this is what he sent. This is quoting Baker. From a pod perspective, I noticed recently how intertwined their languages between football and FPL. Like I think most of us talk football or FPL. I tend to talk football and apply an FPL lens, or I talk FPL and apply a football context. They more than anyone talk a full hybrid when they discuss games and players. But they rarely switch out from that into a full FPL mode for what is strategy. I feel like if they just focus a little bit on that, they'd be great at the game. That's it. Like occasionally, I just want them to take a step back and look at the state of the game.
Right. Yeah, I guess where a lot of this is also rooted. Now, just hearing that and just reflecting on that.
Ending his last line. That's why we use and abuse them.
That's why we use and abuse them. Oh, that is beautiful. I mean, it's funny. I'll go back to what I was going to say, but it is funny when, like, I'm sure Walsh has had this too, but we haven't talked about it. But when people ask me sort of about the pod, like, people who don't, play FPL or follow it or whatever, and they're just like, oh, so, are you really good or like, whatever. Kind I'm like, no, I'm like, okay, but like not really good. I'm not nowhere near like the best players or whatever. And then, we kind of talk about that and joke about it. I talk shit about myself, whatever. But then there's always the like caveat of, yeah, but also a lot of the best players in the game listen to our pod and like care about what we have to say. And they're like, why? And I'm like, I don't really know. They think we're good at some stuff, but they don't do the moves that we do. And it's a weird balance. But yeah, I think you and Baker fall into that.
And like take the notes you're saying or to you specifically, to Alon, I'd say that like so many times when we're looking at your transfers, and so I've listened to 95% of the Monday pods.
Yeah.
And then Friday, sometimes I don't listen to pod because it's a short turnaround, work and all comes in the middle. But I always receive those emails and you're always posting your teams. And after we've heard the Monday pod, the moves that you make on Saturday, more often than not surprise us.
Yeah.
Like how did you come here after where you were on Monday? Like that's the thing. That's the only thing. Like take your notes on Monday because those are better for you
Yeah, I mean,
because it's what we use.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, the thing that I really want to do this year, and I'm actually making a notebook with a friend of mine to try and help me do it, is to just take notes on, like, early in the game, like Saturday, Sunday, Monday, whatever, about like my early thoughts, early moves, just so I have something to reflect back on before I actually make my moves. Because yeah, I mean, Walsh and I obviously influence each other a lot. We've been playing fantasy sports together for legitimately 20 years, over 20 years at this point. We're starting with like fantasy basketball and whatever, but so we we influence each other a lot and we tell each other stories. But yeah, I think you're right. And shit, what was I gonna say about what Baker said?
Is there a circle of trust outside of just you two? Like when you're making your moves on Friday, like are you running that move past maybe two other people, or it's just Walsh, or it's just in your head?
I would say most of the time we both just make our moves and don't even consult each other. Like he sends me his moves, I make my moves, and I post the thing. Sometimes if I'm really struggling, I'll DM him, or if I'm a wild card, and we're definitely in like more open communication of like, oh, I'm thinking I could do this. And then there's the rare time when like I'm really engaged, or something like that, where you and I talk, or like me or someone like you, probably mostly you, or just a couple of the other people on Discord or something who I trust, and like whatever. But usually there's no dialogue. So that's kind of why I wanted to start with like the notebook situation, because I want at least a dialogue with myself. Is basically like, that's the baseline of taking notes, right? Is like, at least if I'm not talking to you and Walsh and whatever before I make my move, at least I can look back and have a conversation with myself to say, what changed from Sunday to Friday on why I want to bring in this guy instead of the two guys that I was planning on bringing in.
Yeah. It might not be a bad idea because it's really helped me also. Because I used to fly solo a lot.
Yeah.
2 years or 3 years ago. And what made me realize the season I went without Salah, game week 1, and got absolutely fucked, and wasn't able to recover from there, was that it was a story that I'm telling myself. And the sort of filter that I have in my head now is there's a group of 3 or 4 people that I trust, and like Zoff's one of them, my partner.
Love Zoff.
And Zoff and me are contrasting in terms of how we play the game, but he knows how I play the game and he knows how I like to play the game. A question I ask him is not whether I should do it. I just ask him, tell me if it's stupid. Like,
is it too much, basically?
Like, does it make, is there sense in this theory? Is it stupid? And there have been times where he stopped me from doing something and it's worked. And most of the times he tells me, no, go, it's not stupid. And that's all the assurance you need in terms of how far you go when you're making that move. That's about it.
Yeah, I mean, I'd like to dive in there a little bit more, actually, because on that one bad season where you didn't start with Mo, which is a cardinal sin in FPL, like, it feels so weighted against you and difficult to actually play catch up in FPL, more so than like any other game I play. Like, how... And of course, there's so many more people playing the game and more informed players of the game too. You're right. You're not just getting some incredible player that no one else has. Like, by the time you turn around, he's 90% owned in the top 10K. How do you catch up? What do you do if you have a bad start? Or is the whole point of kind of not betting, not like managing the bets against, is the whole point of that to just not have to play catch up?
Yeah, because I went all tilt. Like, I was obsessed with Timo Werner that season, and I just stuck with him way too long that season. I'm a believer.
Yeah, me
Timo,
too.
And so, and it was difficult. Like, if I knew how to pull myself out of the situation, I'd have done it, but I wasn't able to, because you're always trying to shortcut your way and you're not thinking straight. Like weirdly enough, momentum is a thing in FPL.
Yeah.
Like, when you're thinking straight and you're not doing stupid things. Like, if you're trying to shortcut, because you're not thinking like, this is the right move. I'm like, how do I make up 30 points this week? Because I need to make up 30 points. I'm behind. And that leads to your head thinking different stupid things. But probably, like, this is great because there's a guy that I talk to called FPL Rouser, and he does this insane thing of not looking at OR all season.
Oh, I don't even understand. I mean, how could you not, though? You see it.
He knows how to do it. He's got a small circle of trust in terms of what he's doing, but he's like,
Does he send like a telegram to a friend
no,
for his moves?
no.
Here's my login and password. Like, make this move for me. I don't even want
when
to
you
log
log
into the
in,
website.
so he uses the phone or the app, and apparently when you log in, and I believe him because he's a great guy and I've spoken tons to him.
Yeah,
Like he's somebody, he's like a friend who I talk to, and I absolutely take his word because his simple thing is that doesn't help your FPL game. You're not making optimal decisions if you're aware of your rank.
I think that's probably true.
Like that's the theory in
that
his.
makes sense. Yeah.
So when you told me like how do you recover, my answer would be unless you're involved in min leagues or cash leagues or you're around game week 30 where you can play 8 weeks based on whether you want to be aggressive or not based on your rank goals. I think the best answer is to not be aware of your rank.
Dance like no one's watching.
Dance like no one's watching. Just don't pay attention to rank.
That's actually so sensible. I mean, for everything you just said, right? Like just imagining your season where you're on tilt, you don't start with Mo, whatever, right? Every decision and thought you probably had that season is colored by the fact that you're ranked 1 million and you get a red arrow every week.
Absolutely. I was trying too hard. I was absolutely trying too hard.
Yeah. When the right thing to do is actually just steady the ship. I mean, I think one of the most, like, not maybe toxic's the wrong word, but one of the worst ways that we describe FPL, and I see it all over Discord, I see it all over Twitter, is when everyone says, yeah, but everyone owns him. Well, no one except for maybe Mo and his Mo season is actually owned by everyone. You know, even if they're owned by 80% of the top 10K, whatever, capped by, 80% of the top 10K, that's 20% that you could gain rank on if you think they're the best captain.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Agreed.
It's just wrong. We always say, Walsh and I saying is that, like, it's also a differential to have everyone. Right? Like, the way that the percentages and ownerships work is that having all of these guys who are highly owned is also a differential. It doesn't have to be that you pick the one guy who's no one has, so it's a good thing. But yeah, I was gonna say, go.
And you can't not pay attention to EO. Like 2 years ago, I really, really wanted to try being the purist and not pay attention to EO, but you need to. You're playing against other people. That's pretty much the game.
That's really, that when Walsh kept hammering that home on the premium pod, I was just like, God damn, dude, you're on point. Like I don't want to hear it because I don't want to accept it, but it's true. I mean, it's true. And that's the thing that, I was going to say that Baker said also, right, is we spend no time on just FPL. Literally none.
Yeah.
I never think of just FPL. I never, and that's part of the reason I think Walsh and I consume no FPL content is because that's what most of the other pods and articles and whatever spend all of the time on just FPL, like for the most part, right? And I think that one of the things that's changed for me, and I'm saying this, a month before the season started, so we'll see if it stays true. But one of the things, at least in the initial pod and the premium pod that Walsh and I did, is that I feel right now actually interested in the game. For the first time in years, I'm like, I actually find this interesting. I find this strategically engaging, like something that is a challenge and a puzzle. And I always used to feel that way, and I think that's what drew me to the game initially. But somewhere along the way, Walsh and I just got lost in the sauce and just only talk about who sucks and who's good and not FPL at all.
Yeah. And if you really think about it right now, what really got me sucked into this game was 10 years ago, I stumbled upon FFS, and it wasn't really what was on FFS, but it was 50 other like-minded people. And Walsh was on there. He'll tell you, talking every day, figuring how to solve this game. And it's still a tough game to solve, and I feel like talking to 5, 10, 15 people throughout the year in terms of, all right, how are we solving this? What do you think is the meta here, etc., as well. And as much as we'd like to think we're not the only smart ones here, there are a ton of other smart people playing this game, and I think there's no harm in listening to a few of them in terms of what they're talking, in terms of strategy, in terms of how the season is panning out. I'm really always primarily interested in the meta. When I'm listening to you guys, I'm there for the reads because it's the best reads, right? So it's a combination of, it's like a study group.
Yeah. Totally.
And then you try to figure how you want to take what from what. That's about it. Like, you need to be aware of the filters and the biases that people have when they're talking. Right. That's really about it.
Oh man, this is a deep dive, dude. This is therapeutic. I needed this, actually.
I think you were already on the way. Like, when I was listening to the premium pod today, like, you guys were on it.
I know. We were close. We were there. And in 2 weeks I'm bringing on FPL Salah. So another guy, your kind of ranks, just a fucking legend of the game, so it'll be more of this. It's me trying to engage with the game in a way that I pretty much never have.
He's the perfect guy for you to bring pre-game week 1, I reckon.
Why is that?
Because So he's the guy who, so he used to be a part of this FPL forum called FISO. Okay, and there's this post that somebody made on FISO in terms of how to make sure you're not having an FPL shit season, and there was I
need that
4 pages of an article in terms of how you structure a season so that you're not completely far away, and it's essentially going primarily chalk early season. That's pretty much the core of it, and I was like, I'm going to try this, and it matched with what I saw in terms of my own research, in terms of when I looked at my season data, right? And that's how I came to that conclusion. So he's great because if at all you're tithering, he'll tell you. He's a good judge in terms of telling which are the bets to make and which are the bets
he'll rein me in once I have no Mo, no Holland, whatever it is. Yeah. All right, man. Well, so it's been like 45 minutes or something. So do you want to talk about any teams or players or anything like that quickly, and then maybe we'll wrap it up, or what are you thinking?
I have a couple of Liverpool questions, actually.
Yeah, let's go for it.
So Trent and Salah are not worth really talking about, but
I agree.
I'm interested in the Robbo versus Van Dijk versus Diaz debate, and then there's a little bit of a trend that I saw, and then somebody posted some stats on Twitter as well. In terms of Robbo's output, went really up, like it spiked once Diaz started playing on the left.
Oh,
and if you really. And and then I got thinking about it. And if you really think about it, Diaz, 80% of the times he's going to cut in and shoot, or cut and drag 2 defenders with him, and that just leaves a ton of space for Robbo on the back post. If you think about it, he's been free on the back post a lot of times when Diaz is playing on the left-hand side. Is there any truth to this, where Robbo might be a better asset now that Diaz is playing on the left-hand side?
Yeah, I mean, to tell you the truth, I hadn't really thought about that or considered it. It's like too early. I haven't fully dove into that kind of stuff, but it makes sense. But the thing that I would say is that if I were to just guess on a theory to that, I would say I think it's more due to the fact that Mo was having such a down end of the season and not as much part of the game, because when Liverpool's going well, we build everything through the triangle of Trent, Hendo, and Mo. Absolutely everything goes through them. And so I don't think that it's necessarily the case that because Diaz is on the pitch, Robbo's necessarily doing better. I think it might have been more the case that because Liverpool happened to be playing down the left more, that was more of an option, that's why Robbo's numbers and back posts and that stuff was increasing more so. Because in a normal, I feel like you talk about this with some teams, but when you think about a normal Liverpool attack, it's almost always Mo playing in Trent or Trent playing in Mo. That's how it begins, and maybe sometimes that's how it ends, but usually that's how it begins. Maybe Mo's gonna then cross it or cut it back or shoot. Maybe Trent's gonna cross it, whatever. But it's not. Even when Mane was there, right? It's not build through Mane and let Robbo make the overlapping run. Of course, it happens from time to time, but it's not just like the standard way of play. So I would attribute it to probably Mo getting less touches and being less involved than normal. And he didn't even play in some of those games, right? He didn't start like 3 out of the last 6 or whatever. But it is interesting. I mean, I definitely think it's worth looking at. You know what Y Scout is? Have you ever used it?
Nope.
I was looking at it, and I might do a thing with Nate, like a video thing. But basically, it has it's not free at all. It's quite expensive, but basically it has every player pretty much in the world, as far as I can tell, in any league, and you can pull video from all of their actions. So right, you can say, I want to see every Robbo shot from the second half of last season, or every Robbo big chance, or every, Diaz to Robbo connection. And you can just see that, and it'll just make a playlist of video clips, and you'll just see all of them.
That is great.
It's unbelievable. I think it's like really the most underused tool probably in FPL. I mean, part of it is because it's so expensive, but I think also part of it is because, it gets weird with like the rights to the footage and reproducing it, right? I can't just post on YouTube, here's all the Diaz clips. Like I would just get taken down and banned from Wisecap for life. But, it is underutilized in the sense that like, not that, theorizing would go away, but something like this where you're asking me a very specific thing from a very specific part of the season, right? I would love to just be able to go watch it and be like, well, why are we making up what might have been happening or why something is happening
when you can just see something,
when I could just see it and be like, actually, that was kind of a lucky bullshit shot. And actually, Mo wasn't on the pitch. It was kind of a weird game, whatever it is. And yeah, it's worth looking into. I can show you a thing from it. I'll DM you after, but yeah, it's really cool.
And just a second question that I had. What do you think is Diaz's floor as an FPL pick? Because when I watch him, right, it's a little confusing to me because his shooting, he shoots a lot. He's a shot merchant.
Yeah.
But a lot of it is from distance. Yeah. A lot of it is just outside the D, cut and shoot, take a shot. Like
right.
He's not like Mo, wherein the cross is coming in from Robbo and he's placing himself in the center of the box. Or even when Robbo's there or Trent is there, he's not doing the Mane thing where he's in the center of the box. So I just need to understand how close he is to Mane as an FPL pick from what you've seen first half of last season.
Yeah, I mean, starting with Mane, I mean, I genuinely think that Mane is one of the most underrated players in the last decade. Just getting a player who exclusively plays wide, except for, the last 15 games of last season. Basically, his whole career has been exclusively wide, in England at least, and never took pens, ever, on any team, and just puts up the amount of goals that he puts up and the consistency that he puts up, right? So I don't think that they're actually that similar. Like, I think Mane is a really unique player who, is capable of golden boot in open play, like Son levels of just goals in open play, right? I don't think Diaz is that. And if you look at just on FBref, I'm just looking at the average distance of their shot, right? Mane is 13.3 yards per shot. He's as low as, the only guys ahead of him are Matip, Konate, Jota, and VVD. In terms of proximity to goal for every shot, Mane is just in there. He's got that's his true skill. I think that's what makes him underrated and elite, is that his ability to get in those areas and get those shots. I think of someone like Raz similarly. Honestly, like Raz's true talent is like getting on the end of stuff and getting huge chances. And regardless, I don't care if he finishes them or not. If he does it enough, he's going to score 20 goals. Diaz is not like that.
What's Diaz's number?
He's 16 yards per shot. So that's pretty far, and that's not so good. So I mean, I don't really think of him that much as okay, he can do what Mane can do in terms of goal scoring, even though his XG was really good last season under Liverpool. I don't think that that's really where you're going to get. I don't expect 15 goals in open play from him. I just don't see that. But I do think that his floor is still very high because I think the assist potential is really high. I mean, I think double-digit assists, if he's playing the amount that we probably both think he's going to play, is very real. And so if we're talking at someone who's, around 10 goals maybe, but with around 10 assists too, I mean, that's really good. Still, that's add in, of course, like you can look at someone like Matto, who's 12 and 11 last year, right? And that's 181 points. Well, add in the fact that, Diaz may get less bonus than Matto, but he's getting 15 more clean sheet points also.
Clean sheet points, yeah. Yep.
So, if that's really what I think about him, and then I'm kind of saying his floor is like, I don't know, 170, 180.
Yeah.
The thing
Yeah.
that makes him so attractive, I think, in FPL is that his ceiling is unknown.
Yep.
Because he could also just score 15 goals. Like, everything I'm saying might be true, and yet he still just bangs in 15 goals. And some of those ones from outside the middle of the box or just on the edge of the box, like that hit the post last season or hit the post against United in the preseason game. Some of those go in, and all of a sudden he's on 15 goals and 12 assists and 20 clean sheet points, and you're like, holy shit.
Yeah. That's the only one, because the tricky part with him also is it's you're not just not picking another good 8 million midfielder. You're not picking VVD or Robbo.
Yeah.
And like those 3 Liverpool slots are important. So those are the questions that I had.
Yeah. What about United? How are you feeling? Or obviously it's extremely early on in the Ten Hag era. They beat Liverpool 4-0. How, this was a question from Discord, but how soon do you think you would go United? Like, do you think there's contention for game week 1? Maybe Rash, I see some people on. And then, how soon would you be jumping to someone like Bruno? Because the thing, I love the Bruno pick. I love all the points that Walsh made about Bruno. But, if you're going Bruno, you're sacrificing another premium and you really have to change your team. So it's risky, I think, game week 1 to go for someone like that. But what would you need to see to be like, okay, it's time, I need to get Bruno immediately?
I think if you're going Salah and Haaland anyway, and you're not really bothered about Spurs, I think Bruno's a decent pick game week 1 also. Like my assumption with United, and I spoke about this earlier also, is that the whole key to this whole thing is Ronaldo doesn't play game week 1.
That's everything. That's everything.
He needs to have left the club. And if he leaves the club and these guys need to play with each other, like Tony, Drash, and Bruno have played with each other a while.
Yeah.
Like they've got a little bit of team chemistry. Ten Hag just needs to set them into a system. And what he's focusing on is patterns of play. I think United might be like the team that they were when I came onto your pod the first time.
Yeah.
Wherein a lot of underpriced players, enough quality in attack, don't touch the defense at all. Because I think, when it comes to re-coaching a team, a high press, and completely changing the way they're playing the game. And I think because of the banter club that United has become, people are not looking as closely as at the fact that we've got an A-list elite coach now coaching the team. Like this, and upward trajectory elite coach coming to our club hasn't happened in the last 10 years. So and it doesn't take really good coaches to get a tune out of the team. Like, especially whether it's either in attack or defense. So I feel like all our options in attack are underpriced. And
absolutely agree with that. Yep.
And I'm looking to jump on them game week 1 if I have to. I think 6.5 million for Rash, 7.5 million for Sancho. They're good prices.
7 for Tony if he's up top.
7 for Tony if there's no Ronaldo. If you remember that phase of the season, people were struggling and trying to get 3 United attackers in that 8-game week COVID period when we were scoring goals. So I think that's still there. There's enough creativity. Now we have Eriksen as well. If you really think about it, there are enough people on the pitch to create chances at least. So I think we're going to be it's going to be a lot like Klopp's first season, where you'll see goals, but you will see a lot of goals conceded as well. So I don't think you touch our defense at all, but I think there will be goals. There will be goals.
Yeah,
that's where I am with it.
It's weird because it's like one of those things where the fit is a lot better than maybe how people rate the individuals in terms of Rashford, Martial, Sancho, Bruno. Because Sancho and Bruno are on the ball all the time. They need the ball all the time to do stuff, to do well, to play, to get value out of them. They need to be on the ball all the time. Rashford and Martial do not need to be on the ball. They just need to run. Like Tony needs the ball and shoot. He doesn't pass. He doesn't need to pass. They don't even want him to pass. Rashford, go beat a man, make the run, make the late run, make the far post run, counter. He doesn't need the ball. He's never been like a winger. ever in his career, even though he played wide. So I actually like the fit a lot there. I just hope they have the balls to actually sell Ronaldo and go for it. And that's obviously, the big question.
I think they're trying to. Like the fact
I think so
that
too.
Mendes
I think so too.
It's just who's going to buy him. The question is that I don't think there's a buyer at the moment.
Who's going to buy him, and also where will he go? Because also he's, a needy bitch, and he's not going to just go play for, some shitty ass team who's not in the Champions League or whatever. He probably has a list of like, I'll play for these 3 teams, and if they don't buy him, he's not going.
It might come down to him having to play for a shitty ass team, but that's in the Champions League.
Yeah.
For that reason, I'm happy we're not in the Champions League.
Yeah, I know, right? It's kind of a good thing in a weird way. Yeah, I totally agree with
that. That's where I am.
Yeah.
So,
okay. All right, man. So, I could talk to you for hours, but we should probably, not go for a 5-hour pod this early in preseason. But, where can people, check you out and listen to you and read your work and all that stuff to, keep up with you for, pre-game week 1 and all that stuff?
Late Rise at 12. That's about it. At Late Rise at 12 on Twitter and on the Discord.
Hell yeah. And the Wire. Don't forget about the FPL Wire.
And you can find us on the FPL Wire on YouTube as well. We're there in all your podcast applications. Yeah.
Hell yeah, man. Thanks so much for coming on, dude.
Cheers. It's been great.